Hey everybody, you're watching the Famous Brown TV show. I got a special guest, and it's strange how it happened. Her plane got delayed. She's on her way to California. Her plane got delayed. She stayed here overnight. So people called me and said, "You got to talk to Miss Bettie. You got to talk to Miss Bettie." I said, "Well, who is Miss Bettie? Who is Miss Bettie?"
Miss Bettie is a young lady from Selma, Alabama, by the way of Los Angeles, California, but have been fighting in the civil rights struggle ever since the 1960s and still fighting today.
Bettie Mae Fikes is a trailblazer. As a kid, she was at the epicenter of the civil rights struggle in Selma, Alabama.
There were a lot of people just at March and was completely kicked out of their homes. So a lot of things that we take so for granted today, someone had to die for back then. This is Black History Month.
Fikes addressed students today at Northport Elementary School in Brooklyn Center.
We're still in a fight.
Mixing in music with her message.
Most of our younger generation now don't even have a clue about their history.
Fikes and countless others jump-started the civil rights movement in the 1960s, building a foundation for change that benefited African Americans. Today, however,
and I'm crying more than I ever cried before. I have a history.
Fikes believes there are cracks in that foundation.
What will your story be? When the foundation is laid, you're supposed to be able to build. We're not building.
Fikes experienced police harassment in Selma and knows it still happens in 2016. She says a few rogue cops bring down the entire police force.
See, these bad cops have made it very bad for people to trust the good cops. There are a bunch of good cops that represent different states and cities.
Fikes also follows the Black Lives Matter movement.
I'm on board with Black Lives Matter.
And sympathizes with their cause.
People are just getting fed up. And they don't know any other way to speak out other than this.
For Fikes, her visit to Northport is just another step in a remarkable journey.
Yes, I was one of the young girls that marched from Selma. Well, when it started in Selma, the first march is the thing that is historic today. That's where the police brutality took place and the beatings took place. The second march later on was a safe march where they marched all the way from Selma to Montgomery with Martin Luther King, and then all of a sudden after Valdez was killed, people from all over the country came to march. So it's very historic now.
Well, how do you, well, not how, but what do you think about the attitude of black people during that stage and the black people attitude that you meet now as far as civil rights?
Well, the attitude that I take back then was that I tell them it felt like the ones who are believers that seemed like the day when Moses led the people out of Egypt. There was such unity among the people.
Right.
The old grandmother singing the song of, we shall overcome, and that song was taken from an old spiritual. But the unity of the people back then, and it was saying something inside of me keeps telling me to go ahead. And what I see the difference today is that the spirituality is gone today. We fought for education, but education now is by itself is really no good. Spiritually, they say what they would always say, the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Today we say mind, body, and spirit. But if you don't have some spirituality about you, whatever organization you're in, it happens, but when there's no music, when there's no substance, it's not lasting.
You absolutely, well,
So I didn't join the movement captured me. I finally found my place. I could do something. And it wasn't so much about singing. When you're able to help someone else, you're really helping yourself more. So in the movement, going out in the rural areas of places where I grew up and didn't know anything about it, because I thought everything was all right in Selma. But when the movement and the people came, we had as the whiteys would say, those freedom riders. They called everybody freedom riders. And when they came to the county of Selma, Dallas County, we didn't really have hotels, so they stayed in homes. We had black hotels, but they were so overcrowded at the time, and then freedom people didn't have no money. So the community opened up doors for them to stay.
That you sung a little bit, and one of the people that you performed with was the legendary James Brown. Tell me about that.
Well, that was a thing. I was singing with a group in my hometown by the name of the Micronites, and this particular Saturday night, James Brown was touring the South, and he was in Montgomery, Alabama, and his record, I think, promoter came to Selma, which his mother lived in Selma. Wizenhunt was his name. And he came to the Elks Club where I was performing, and they said, we want to take you so James Brown can hear you. So I couldn't go right away because I had to get permission from my grandmother and the ones that had raised me. So they said no. Then they sent some more people from James' crew to let them know that they would take care of me. So the only way I could go was a fellow by the name of Charles William and Mook was my overseers. So they carried me so James Brown could hear me. And I finished the Southern tour with James Brown. And I came home for them my parents to sign the contract. And my old grandmother, who died at the age of, one birthday said she was 113, the other one was 117. She said that gal is not going to be out there singing those reels. So she said no. And finally, James Brown, we didn't have a telephone at the time, so James Brown contacted me by calling Good Samaritan Hospital. And one of the orderlies from the hospital came down and said, you have a phone call from James Brown. So in less than 10 minutes, that had went all over town. So I went and received a phone call and talked to him, and I told him my grandmother had said no. And after then, he sent this fellow to my home and to talk to my grandmother, and she said no. That night there's poison, that gal don't need to be out there. That night they're singing those reels. They wanted me to be another Mahalia Jackson.
Keep that gospel.
Yes. So the little time that I was out there, I truly enjoyed it. And he was much different then than the one he's portrayed in the 80s. Everybody, let's have some fun. You only live once, so when you're dead, you're done. Let the good time roll. Let the good time roll. I'm gonna stay right here until I soothe your soul. Look at that. Might be 1 o'clock and it might be 3. Time don't mean that much to me. Let the good time roll. Let the good time roll. I'm gonna stand right here until I soothe your soul. Hey, Mr. Landlord, lock all the doors. If the police come, tell them the joint is closed. Let the good time roll. Let the good time roll. You only live once. Come on and let the good time roll.
So young, get involved in civil rights. Well, nobody really knows the true story because we got all the dignitaries that came along afterwards that taken on the glory. But it was the children of Selma that started the movement in Selma. And we had men like Silas Norman and another one by the name of John Love that had came from New York that helped organize us. But at that time, our teachers, our parents, we didn't even know that our parents didn't have the right to vote. So my thing was just to have something to do. When Bernard Lafayette came and his car had broke down and asked the question, do you all know whether or not your parents got the right to vote? And
it was Charles Bonner and Cleophas Hobbs, and they talked. So what happened, he gave pamphlets to us to pass out. Charles had bought me pamphlets. So we went through the community passing out pamphlets, letting people know about a mass meeting, which we knew had no clue what was going on. And this happened, and this is how the kids got involved. After the mass meeting started, we wanted to know no blacks, adults were getting involved. Now, by us being children, we didn't understand that, so we began to think that our teachers and adults were cowards. So it was the children of Selma that started the movement. And when SC and LC and all of them came in, and a group there in Selma by the name of Courageous 8, they had been working undercover for years, but nobody really knew about them. So until the mass meetings and things like that started.
Well, what about the movie? Do the movie tell?
No.
What?
No, it's not the real. And if anyone have seen the movie,
I saw it. So
when you see the credits, it also says that this is not a documentary.
Okay.
So they just put this movie together, and the people of
make
the
some
movement, the people of the movement are very upset about that. I haven't seen it because I was not afraid to see it, but so many, my phone rang off the hook for over a month. This movie, and everyone say it's a good movie. I don't take anything away from it, but I don't think you should have done anything like that when we're talking about the history of our
true
people.
history.
Yes.
But right now we're taping during Black History Month. Now tell everybody, what are you doing now?
Well, I'm traveling across the country, still telling the story of the old songs, because I constantly keep saying that every nationality that comes to this country bring their heritage and their culture with them, and they pass it on from generation to generation. We're the only culture of people that give ours away. We call the blues sad songs, and not knowing the history of the blues. So I try to keep alive the old spirituals, the old gospel songs. I allow my daughter, not allow, but let them do all the mortar and praise and worship. But nobody really do the old songs like from church when the deacons would be in the front of the church doing devotion. Instead of that today, we have more of the praise and worship. So now we are, as a matter of fact, Smithsonian, we were a group of people that traveled the country for a while, researching churches to find churches that still did the old moan, "Oh Lord, have mercy." You don't find that anymore.
Well, we have a true icon. Now, you might read stuff in the books and see stuff on TV. Here's a lady that actually lived it, walked it, and can tell you the truth.
And I try to keep truth alive. I try to keep truth alive because we have so many books out. And most of the books that have been out are books that have been researched. We don't have too many people that laid the foundation. And when you're giving this history out of our history, we already have been misplaced for over 500 years. We've been fighting among ourselves for over 500 years. Now is the time for truth. And the truth is the only way we can have substance in our lives. This is what we call the blues that you won't quite understand. You know, we used to, growing up, you see the fellas sitting around with a beer, cigarette hanging out of their mouths, and I didn't understand the meaning. So I always tell everybody, my mother was a gospel singer. She gave me the gospel. My daddy was a gigolo, and he gave me the blues. Every weekend I would hear songs like, "When you see me coming, go and get my rocking chair." I didn't understand that. Oh my God. I wanted to hear some, "Wait a minute, Mr. Postman." I didn't understand until I got older. But at 15, 16, and 17 years old, I was making adult decisions about civil rights, fighting for the right to vote that the Constitution had already given each person of America the right to have and to hold. And we're still pretty much fighting for that today. And the reason I travel talking to so many youth today, because the time is going to come that you will have to tell your story. What will your story be? That's why I do what I do today. I want you to understand the blues. But in order to understand the blues, you have to have a spiritual connection to something, to someone. When I say my mother gave me the gospel, I learned how to sing without music. And for a long time, I had to practice to learn how to sing with music. I don't read a note, and I worked in the studio for years. But from the heart of music, and to understand when my mother used to stand in the old churches and do songs like I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long. I've been in the storm so long, but I'm trying to make heaven my home. That was the gospel without music. Thank you. That's why singing the blues became easy, because I had to feel it and to understand. So when I speak to the children today, I say, I am Maya Angelou. I am Harriet Tubman. When you hear the stories, you don't just hear the stories. Place yourself in the story. I place myself with Harriet Tubman, wandering through the woods on cold winter nights, freeing slaves. From the 1800s to the 1960s, Angela Davis, people that fought for freedom, that lost their lives. And when they said, Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya, Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya, Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya, oh Lord, Kumbaya. So you have to put yourself in every situation, not just listen to it, but put yourself there. And I bet you, if you place yourself there, when it comes time for you to tell your story, when it comes time for you to sing your song, when it comes time for you to play your guitar, your piano, your bass, or even sitting behind the camera, you can do it with a passion. And if you don't have the passion for it, please don't. Because you're going to make somebody else very miserable. Don't do that to us. Okay? I love doing what I do. I am a big joke. They call me the gospel comedian. They say I'm the only one that can sing the blues in clubs and have people crying. Summertime, I like to tell the stories. Let's do some more music. And this is what you call a honky tonk and the shuffle. You know, they didn't do the twist back then. But they said the party's jumping, everybody's having a good time. You know what's going through my mind. Do you mind if I get comfortable and kick off my shoes? Hey. Why you fixing me a drink? Play me some of them down home.
Well, they're so good at giving you false information, and you have to go do your own research.
Yes.
You can't believe everything that you hear or you read, because it's an interpretation of what they wanted you to believe.
Yes.
And history always push safe blacks that they were comfortable with. But the real people that got out there in the struggle and work, you don't hear much about them.
No.
What do you?
Well, that is so sad because I always speak before of my people before I start any lecture. I tell everybody that I'm here for the unsung heroes, the people that names are not in books, the people that you will not see in documentaries, but those are the people that laid this foundation for this younger generation to build on.
But in doing some reading, I don't know how true it was, but Martin Luther King had a hard time with a lot of the church folks. A lot of folks were fighting against Martin Luther King.
Lord,
They don't talk
yeah.
about that.
Yes, it was a long time before churches would even open their doors for us. So nobody really knows that, well, not know it, but talk about this. But it was a long time before people got in line. It was a long time in Selma before our teachers. My proudest day was when the adults started to march, when our teachers started to march. I just left Detroit where one of my classmates, and I didn't even know this, one of our teachers changed his grade. And they were getting ready to send him to reformatory school. That's what they called it back then, because he was in the movement. And he lived over the apartment over the printing press that was her husband. But this old Jew that was very rich in Selma, that his father worked for, came to their defense and told them, if anything happened to this child, he got our principal that we were calling a nervous Nellie. They got our vice principal, Mr. Taylor, we were calling Nervous Nellie. If anything happened to Terry Shaw, you and the superintendent would have problems with me.
This your first time in Richmond?
My first time.
All right. I know you got to catch your plane before you leave. Can you say something to the folks in Richmond, or just give us a word of advice on what you want Richmond to do?
Well, Richmond, I want you to do continually. Keep forging ahead. We still got to fight before us. What's behind us is still behind us, but it's still pushing us forward. So here in Richmond, I want you to know that we will never turn back until we all are free. Let's keep going for the best that the Lord has given us. He said that if you just forge ahead, I got your back.
Now, I know you take a lot of engagements all over the country. If someone want to get you to come out and speak, can you give a number or how to contact you? And give your full name so people know who they're watching.
Yes, my name is Bettie Mae Fikes. And you can contact, Google. As you know, I'm not all in this modern technology, but you can contact me by Google. My agent, which is for schools, is called Conscious Campuses. And we try to keep the conscience alive. And they're beautiful people to work with, especially with colleges.
Thank you very much for being part. You're watching the Famous Brown TV show.
I'm President Brown from Richmond. I just celebrated a birthday. I made it to 62 without getting shot. I grew up through segregation, and I grew up as a privileged person with all the privileges of the day. We live in a exclusive, private community. It was for color only. I went to a private school. It was for color only. When we went to fancy restaurant, we had our own private dining room. It was round the back. And I had a special seat on all buses in the back. I didn't get a chance to sit up front till I went in the Army. And the sergeant said, well, we treat our colored people different in this USA Army. I said, well, thank you, Sergeant. I'm tired of being in the back. He put me right up front. Yes, he did. Right on the front line. Bullets flying everywhere. I ran to the back. I said, Sergeant, I like it in the back.
For the last 30 minutes, you've been entertained by the Famous Brown TV show. Join us next weekend at these same times for the Famous Brown TV show with your host, P.T. Brown.